All right, everybody. With us today is Eve Lorgen, who's written a book called The Love Bite, and she just came out with a new one called The Dark Side of Cupid. This is really both these books are really interesting. And when I came across Eve, um, the first thing that came into my mind, because you should see the cover of this book, it's absolutely frightening. It's two humans kind of being dissolved together as if they're going to make out with this like AI technology sucking their faces as if like they're falling in love because of something external. And this is what she writes about. Could our relationships, the people we love, this idea of twin flames, like, oh, you're not supposed to be together forever, but you're supposed to learn something. Could all of that, even the idea of you've been in a narcissistic relationship, be part of something external, whether it's paranormal or it's alien controlling who we love? And of course, if that's true, why? So joining me today is Eve Lorgen. She has a master's in counseling and psychology for marriage and family. She's a hypnotherapist. She's a former biochemist, and she is also an experiencer. Eve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get to it. You've recorded lots of people in your research. As a hypnotherapist and a counselor and psychologist, you were able to actually witness firsthand people that were experiencing quite weird stuff. So tell me what you've discovered in your research as far as who we're in love with and why.
That's such a good question. It's huge. But I will just have to give you a little bit of a historical reason why I did this and what I found out. And I really wanted to learn more about the phenomenon that was related to what they're calling the experiencer, ET contact, visitation, or alien abduction. More in the old days, that's what they called it. So within that subpopulation that I did support groups with, and I really delved into wanting to learn more about that, there was a phenomena of manipulated or engineered love obsessions or interference in relationships. Sometimes they were love relationships or work relationships or different kinds, but most of it was focused on a romantic love obsession with what we called a targeted partner that, let's say, the aliens or the ETs or some kind of other entity was engineering and putting them together with or removing from their life of some sort. So this played out in a certain pattern that was identifiable, that was really outside of what we call standard psychology dynamics of relationships. And so I got a lot of my initial information about the alien angle of this from Barbara Bartholic, who is no longer with us, and the late Dr. Carla Turner. So they were all researchers in more of the alien abduction UFO kind of thing. But if I flash it forward, and so through many years of working with people who've had what they believe to be alien contacts and relationships that were interfered with, they were kind of abnormally supercharged with some kind of love obsession, and then a high drama kind of situation, interference with abductions, and then switching off of one partner, leaving the other unrequited, but still feeling psychically connected. So there's more paranormal and supernatural and what I call anomalous elements involved in these kinds of connections.
Why would an entity or an alien interference, why would they want to do this? Are they just having fun up there in another dimension, or do they have another motive?
Well, I believe there was more than one motive. When we focused on, quote, the aliens who took certain forms and perceptions, and there was like what I call the emotional loose feeding, emotional or sexual or life force energy harvesting. So it would be a type of vampirism, plain and simple. Another reason would be maybe they wanted to put two people together so they would have children, and then they would use a genetic downline of some kind of desired bloodline for their own means, which is the whole hybrid thing, breeding program thing. And then the other would be using people as operatives because of their abilities in some kind of joint alien human military program, which is kind of like, the original X-Files when we unfolded a lot of these, what we call the MyLab aspect, where someone was having not only alien encounters outside of the military, but military on top of that. And then as if they're working in conjunction to utilize that person or maybe experiment with them in some way. So that was an experimentation thing, or utilizing them for their abilities that were amplified through a very powerful love obsession where their paranormal and Kundalini energy was activated. Okay. So that was actually a lot of things that happened with people more of the MyLab, or they had the reptilian kind of connections or associations.
That is terrifying. And you know what? It's terrifying because in New Age circles, they say the one thing that can defeat fear or, anything negative or terrible in the world is love. And now you have evidence that interdimensionally other things, or possibly the government, is using the one thing that you can combat all of that to get something out of it, activating it within your system. And of course, if you don't know the difference between falling in love with somebody or getting this love bite, you don't have any control. So I guess, how do you know that you're actually truly with your being falling in love with someone, or if it's a manipulated, like crazy attraction to somebody and you don't know why?
I believe it's if it's something, let's say somebody who's not normally your type, and you feel compelled, but it almost feels like an overlay. Or in fact, in both books, in The Dark Side of Cupid, there would be a list of signs and symptoms that to look for if you think this is being maybe manipulated. So you might have a precognitive dream or meeting in the astral, or something that feels more real before you meet the person, and then it's like a deja vu and a more powerful soulmate connection that they might think it's their twin flame after they meet them. And then during the drama of the connection, there might be more alien encounters or interdimensional weird things or paranormal manifestations, or even like spooky X-File kinds of things that suggest there's more involved than just that person. So sometimes this happens. I know I'm kind of going back, but as a form of targeting. Let's say if somebody is a whistleblower and someone in an intelligence agency or some kind of spooky alphabet soup agency or alien connected to aliens or some X-Filey thing, if they don't want that person disclosing or whistleblowing or spilling the beans about a certain aspect that they don't want out in the public, that person could be targeted with what I call a love bite setup, with a partner that is being either manipulated or is cognizant of being like a handling, neutralizing situation, like a Romeo agent, okay, like in World War II, to suborn or manipulate or neutralize that particular person, or just throw them off track and keep them distracted from maybe the original goals. So that actually is kind of a theme that happens if someone is really on the spiritual path, for example, and they want to uncover the truth of their experiences, which many people who've had anomalous UFO, ET stuff, they want to get, let's say, a hypnotic regression. They want to find out what happened, or find out, like, is this person a twin flame? Why am I so in love with this person? And they may uncover things that are not maybe what they thought life was about. And then that could unveil a whole series of targeting kinds of things to keep that person shut up or neutralized for a period of time. So that actually took place in many of the situations where they felt like, let's say they got done with one relationship or discovery. Let's say a discovery, they were in a cult and they had a bad situation within a cult situation. They got out of that cult to do just, personal growth in a more open-minded spirituality, new agey kind of thing. And then the person who's ahead of that new age center, who seems okay and is carrying on a certain new age narrative, then they get set up with that person, and a similar thing happens, but it's more of a high level ascended master, fallen angel kind of situation where they're manipulating also in a second, like, love bite. So sometimes it happens more than once with a particular person who has a history of complex trauma, which can leave them vulnerable. But sometimes it's because they have an innate supernatural quality or awareness or ability that is of desire for some person who has the ability through sorcery or black magic or intelligence or alien stuff, that they want that person as a resource, or to shut them up if they can't use them as a resource. So that actually happens. So
right. So Yeah, and I think that people listening to this interview right now have probably had an experience where they might still be in that experience actually, but they've had an experience that was so weird and so traumatic, because usually with these relationships, if you get out of them, they are so traumatic that they disrupt your heart field, right? And I don't want to go into new age lingo, but there is a coherence between your heart and your brain. And if the idea of heartbroken, right, causes you to be set back in your career or who you are, or not allow you to move forward, depending on how big the heartbreak is or who you are and how much work you've done on yourself. So this could be a disabling thing. And I think that the work you're doing is really important, because this is the idea for people to love and connect with other humans is one of the most important gifts that we have on this planet, for not only the progression of humanity, but also for our own desire to connect with humans. So the fact that something or someone can control that is frightening. And I think you getting to the bottom of this is really interesting. We're definitely going to bring you back to have more interviews, but we don't have enough time. So we're going to get back to the podcast. But in the meantime, I'd love to follow back up with you, and we'll see what else you come up with, because this is so fascinating.
There's a lot. It's amazing, and it's always unfolding. And I think there's empowering therapeutic strategies that I'm working with as well, so that it doesn't have to be such a scary thing that feels powerless, that there's definitely things that we can do and be to move into our power. And so there's good news too.
Good. And just before I go, can you give anybody just one tip on one thing that they can do to empower themselves when they feel like they're in this kind of relationship?
Well, I would say prayer, like just good old fashioned prayer, and the purity of intention to want to know the truth, regardless of what you want to believe or that you're fearing, which means you have to be open to how, let's say, the Holy Spirit will show you what's going on. And the other thing is to understand complex trauma and the recovery from complex trauma. So that's kind of a new thing on a lot of the therapeutic circles with what they call complex PTSD. But if we can understand that and learn how to recover and reestablish our nervous systems to be back stabilized and regulated, then recovery is much easier. So.
All right, we're going to need a whole breakdown for that, and we're definitely going to bring you back for that. But thank you so much, Eve, for joining us. And again, check out her 2 books, Love Bite, which is the original, and her new book, Dark Side of Cupid. And you can check Eve Lorgen out online. Until next time, stay safe.